3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3 in the place to be. You know who this is. Yo, Khary, live and direct. It's Brother Khary coming to you from the holiest city on earth. Where is that? We are in Medina, Saudi Arabia. I am on Umrah right now. I came on a blessed voyage Umrah with AlMaghrib, and it's a partnership with AlMaghrib Institute and Salam, a travel company, and they come and bring you to different places around the world. This is actually my second time traveling with the Salam and AlMaghrib, and my first experience was so amazing that I had to go ahead and double up, especially when I found out it was my brother Ammar leading the group. Sheikh Ammar Shukri, we've been real close since he moved to Houston. He came for a visit one time and decided to move there. It became a hub. He found out it was much easier living in Texas to go anywhere, United States and Canada, from the great Lone Star state of Texas. I mean, if you guys don't know, my life journey started in Philadelphia, actually Chester, PA. I always say Philadelphia because Chester is such a small city, and when you start getting further away from where your base is, where you begin at, people want to know the area, and they start not knowing where the smaller cities are, so they start relating themselves to something larger. So if you say Philadelphia, a lot of people know what Philly is because the first thing that comes to mind is cheesesteaks. The last thing to come to their mind is the Philadelphia Eagles. Shout out to me. But anyway, my journey began in that area of Philadelphia, or Chester, PA. I was born in Wilmington, Delaware, raised in Chester, PA. And throughout my time in between there, my mom's sister, which later on I actually found out that my mom was the first one interested in Islam, and I guess her sister got a hold of the information. And throughout the years, when my aunt, which, you know, I call her my Muslim mother, she became Muslim, she started implementing the deen, and I've been around her and her kids. You know, my mom was a single mom for a while, so, you know, working and trying to take care of the kids, it's pretty hard to do, but alhamdulillah, she had wonderful family support, because that's what family is for. So that's when I first got my taste of Islam. Now, mind you, in that time, I never believed or associated any partners with God. Even though, like, my grandmother and my grandfather on my maternal side were, you know, Christians at that time. They had a gospel group. So it was a lot of things that they had going on. Now, my paternal side, my grandmother on my paternal side, she is very spiritual too. Like, she's been connected to the church a very long time. But I line all that up to say about me. In my life, I never really associated partners with God in any type of shape or form. I've never really studied religion at any type of shape or form. All I ever seen was the examples that were around me, as far as the gospel group that my grandfather had, going to my grandmother's house on my paternal side. We're talking about my maternal grandfather had the gospel group, and then my paternal grandmother, she was heavy into church. I remember we used to come for spring break. She used to take us to Easter. We have the ham. We have all of that good stuff there. But inside my heart, I always felt that God was alone, and he's still alone, and it's only one God at the end of the day. So through that journey, Islam always just fit a part of my life. It always just seemed like the right thing for me. So I gravitated to it, not really even knowing what it was. And it was many, many, many years later when I started praying Ramadans and doing different things like that. But at the same time, I've never really picked up the Quran. I remember my aunt used to go to the legendary Sister Claire Muhammad in Philadelphia. I can be like maybe 5 years old, maybe 4 years old, because my aunt's daughter was the same age as me. Of course, I'm older, but I'll let her have the title now because we used to argue about that when we was younger. But anyway, we used to drop her off to school, and legendary Sister Claire Muhammad. So I used to see the different Muslims, and Islam has always been a part of me. And through that experience, I think that the deen grew in my heart. Well, fast forward till 1997. In 1997 is when I first took my shahada. I was hanging out with a bunch of Muslim friends at the time, my cousin included, not my female cousin, but she has a younger brother. And we were always hanging tough, always hanging tough. And they asked me one day, hey man, why don't you take your shahada? And you know, I was 16 years old. I'll never forget. I went home and told my mom, hey mom, I'm gonna go ahead and take my shahada. She said, well, you could do whatever you want when you're 18, but when you live in my house, it's my rules, and we Muslim here. Excuse me. She said, it's my house and it's my rules, and we're Christian here. You could do whatever you want to when you're 18. And you know, that really was a appropriate response for a kid, that 17-year-old trying to understand himself. And mind you, I had the best of parents. My father, you know, he was never the type of dad that get angry. I mean, maybe he did, but not force you in a direction or a certain field, as my dad was a photographer, which requires creative thinking. And I always am blessed to have a father like that, that did photography, and I fell in love with that. But that's a whole nother story right now, giving you the backside to the story of the stranger of this culture. So I remember turning 18, I remember becoming a Muslim, and I've never read a Quran in my life at that moment. But something in my heart yearned to be Muslim. Something in my heart knew that there was something more. And I used to tell myself, and I used to tell people when I was like 6 years old or 8 years old, I'm going to be a preacher. But I said that I wasn't going to preach what was being taught, you know, at that moment right there. I didn't understand. Fast forward, I'm 18 years old. I accept Islam, but mind you, I've never read a Quran at that moment before. But I prayed, Ramadans, all these things. And the reason why I bring it up is very crucial and important that Tawheed be introduced to young Muslims. Because at that time, Tawheed wasn't introduced. The concept of Tawheed, the word, I mean, I remember seeing the glossary in the back of the Quran, but you know, it wasn't really introduced to me. So throughout that, not really having that foundation, I lived my life as a Muslim by testimony only, not by knowledge, which led me down some dark paths. If you don't have your roots fully, firmly based on Islam, you're like this tall tree that can get blown over by anything. Versus the believer, it is said to us, they are like palm trees, which are deep rooted. They are flexible, they are bend, but they don't break. So understanding this concept going throughout here. Now, throughout that time in my life, I went through a lot of things. The streets ate me up. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Not in a negative way, but in the perception of being accepted, in the perception of wanting to be rap music, superstars, hood, gangster, you know, the personas that are sold to our youth even today, but even on a bigger level because social media doesn't stop. So imagine through that small impact that I dealt with and how it turned my heart and how it changed me and corrupted me. Imagine what the youth are going through today. Alhamdulillah, Allah decided to humble me. And I remember living in Ohio from 1997 to about 2006. I became homeless at that time by choice. I could have easily went back to my father's house, but I was being a hard-headed kid, as kids do, correct? And what that did is fast forward me and landed me back in Pennsylvania. Now, at this moment, in between then, I can remember before I was homeless that I was still searching for religion. Now, mind you, I was lost from 1997 to about 2006. I've seen all types of sects of Islam and different things like that. But throughout that time, it was, you know, it was a disdain. When you're on a falsehood, it kind of just changes your perception. It changes who you are, alters you, and then atheism starts looking good. And then all types of weird things start looking crazy to you. So, you know, throughout that, I kept going, And when I moved back in 2006 back to Philadelphia, at that moment, I seen my cousin, and from that day, like I said, I was trying to say, I started studying. At that moment, I started studying a Bible. And I said, you know, well, maybe my mom was right and I didn't do the thing right. Maybe I didn't do this thing called religion right. So I was like, I'll start what my mom was on. So as I started reading the Bible, the Christian Bible, and reading and reading and reading, I went through it, I finished it. And after I finished it, I still had questions. Things were still burning inside of me. So what I ended up doing was I was highlighting. After I started reading the Bible, I would highlight different verses, write them, highlight, and I have questions. So I went out and I would ask preachers, and I asked a couple of preachers in Ohio, right? And when I was there, I asked a certain preacher, why is everybody talking in tongues? It was crazy experience. Everybody there was talking in tongues, and everyone was emotional. I was crying myself. I was like, oh my God, but how come I don't get what they get? Talking in tongues. But anyway, I'm not going to clown anything, but that's what I was going on. So I went to the preacher and I asked him, why can they talk in tongues and how come I don't hear that? And the preacher said to me, I never forget, and I thank him for saying it because it started my journey. He said, well, some people have this gift and some people don't. I said, what do you mean? He says, some people going to heaven, and well, you know, and he shrugged his shoulders. Wow, that was my wow moment right there. In that wow moment, I took a deep reflection and I walked away from it. And I'll never forget, I gave up on living in Ohio. I begged my mom for a plane ticket. She booked me a plane ticket back to Chester, PA. And upon then, I used to walk around in Philadelphia. And when I was walking in Philadelphia, I came across Scientology. Yes, Scientology. Well, I started reading this Scientology book. It was Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard. I remember the commercial in the 80s, right? But I remember reading this book, and it was just talking about how your brain records when you're younger. And it said a lot about the mindset, which, you know, we'll just take that idea and throw it up. But I remember like really wanting to know it. And it left me with questions. And I'd never forget, when I went back home to Philadelphia, I had a Bible and I had my Dianetics. My Bible was all marked up with highlighter, and I had this Dianetic books. But soon I got home, I felt the shame when I see my cousin Umar. And upon seeing him, I quickly remembered why I became Muslim, and quickly remember why I was lost. And at the time, I remember my cousin, I remember my cousin Quaz. I went into his room and he had a Quran. And I never forget, I said, Quaz, can I have this Quran? And he said, sure. And surely enough, that Bible that I read cover to cover, backwards and forwards, and highlighted, all those highlighted questions that the preacher before didn't have answered, in Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow, the second chapter of the Quran, every question I had highlighted was answered, and I never looked back. I never looked back. All the hardship that I endured, all the work, all the confusion, Allah answered in a simple Surah Al-Baqarah, right there. And when I read Surah Al-Baqarah, my life completely changed. My life was never the same again. And now look at me in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the Prophet Muhammad's masjid. Me, a kid in the middle of the ghetto. Allah blessed me with Islam. And now I'm in the most holiest, peaceful place you can ever be on earth. And it's my second time here. I am eternally grateful, and I'm sharing my personal story to you to let you know, it's rough, and it's always rough, but Allah is the guider of the hearts, and Allah's timing is perfect. That's all I got for you for my personal story from today. Live in Medina, right here in Medina, inshallah. This is Strangers to the Culture, the first installment of Me on the Road. My brother Malele, I made plenty of dua for you. You're my brother. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. Shout out to me for being emotional and letting you know that it's real and Islam is real. And Allah is the controller of all our affairs. Always keep your attentions with Allah and pray, make dua. Allah will take care of you. Assalamu alaikum till the next time I see you. Strangers to the Culture, the road edition. Yo, Khary, and I'm out.